Hello and welcome back, scholars. Last week, we focused on creating a personal narrative using information from our own personal lives to write a story. Today, we are going to focus on creating an imaginative narrative. So, our learning target for this week is I can write narratives that recount a well elaborated event. So first, you're going to watch this little video on how to write an imaginative narrative for kids, just so you can get some examples. And then just what does brainstorming mean? When you brainstorming, you really think through your ideas. You think about everything that you already have in your mind and any new things that might be forming. A big part of brainstorming is drawing, illustrating your thoughts, and then writing down keywords. So, watch that video for some more information. In class, we created an imaginative narrative together yesterday, and now you'll create your own based on what we shared together, the example that we shared together. First, you're going to think about your characters. Who is in the story? Write and or draw ideas for imaginary friends and characters. Think about your actual friends. Think about some possible characters and now make them more imaginative. Things that would not possibly, some characteristics about them that could not be possibly true of your actual friends. Then where and when. The setting is very important in any story. Where and when does it take place? And that's another place where you can get creative as far as making it imaginative. Maybe it's happening in outer space. Who knows? That would be an imaginative setting. Problem and solution. What is the problem of the story and how will it be solved? Remember, in any story, the main middle part of a story is the problem and then it becoming solved. Of course, we don't want problems to be in life, but that's realistic, and we want to be able to see the victory of when a problem is being solved. So plan out your events. Write your ideas for what will happen in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. If you notice, there are two middle sections because the middle is the main part of the story. A lot of times when we write stories, we think about the beginning, we think about a little bit of the middle, and we think about the ending. But the middle is where all the action, all the drama, all of the problems, all of the climax of the story where it really gets exciting and all the events occur. So you really want to make sure the meat of the story happens in the middle. Here are some transition words to help you with your story. When you are starting a story, you will use not necessarily the first sentence of a story because you want to start with more of exciting beginning, but somewhere in the story at the beginning, you might include the words at first, at that moment, in the beginning, first of all, starting with initially, excuse me. In the middle, you might use words such as after a while, suddenly, eventually, meanwhile. And at the end, you may use some of these words after a while, and the end, in conclusion, to conclude, eventually, or lastly. Drafting means changing your notes from your pre-write into complete sentences. So remember when you're first brainstorming, you're writing keywords, you're writing phrases, you're not writing necessarily complete sentences. So you're going to go from the phrases and words into creating complete sentences. And then you're going to soon organize those ideas into paragraphs. You want to make sure you add details. You want to make sure you use adjectives, description words, such as bright, cheerful, colorful, red, orange. Those words that are going to describe the noun. Then we have adverbs. Usually they end with ly, such as quickly, slowly. And then we have dialogue. That's when two or more people are speaking in a story. As you know, when I'm speaking to someone, you can hear me. Or when you're speaking to someone, we can hear each other. But in a story, in order to know that someone's talking, you will use quotation marks in order to indicate that someone's speaking, and you will say, Alice said, Billy exclaimed, Bob asked. Those are some key words for a dialogue. As you're writing your draft, Go ahead and write out in complete sentences the beginning of your story, the middle. Remember, the middle has two parts because that's the biggest part of the story, and then finally the end. And at the end, to make sure that you are actually finished with the story, you want to use your checklist. Let's first use the revising checklist entitled Arms. So you want to make sure that you've added details, adjectives, adverbs, dialogue. If you've done that, put an X in the box. If you have removed words that are unnecessary, sometimes even as teachers, we write words, paragraph sentences, and then when we reread, we realize we have extra words that we don't need. Maybe we repeated ourselves and maybe the words don't really quite make sense, so we remove those words. And then finally, and also, did you move some words around? Maybe these words in this sentence make make a better sense being placed earlier in the story, or maybe you switch some parts of the sentence around. Make it clear. That's the important part. And then finally, substitute words. So if you have the word good in your story, he was very good. That doesn't give you much information. He was a great thinker, or he was very brilliant. Those are stronger words. So you want to use those key ideas for revision. And then finally, editing. When you're editing, you're going to look at the capitalization. All sentences start with a capital letter. All proper nouns, meaning specific names of people, places, and things, will start with a capital letter. Usage. Do you have does the noun match the verb? You're using the correct verb tense. If it happened in the past, make sure it's a past tense verb. And then punctuation, period, question mark, exclamation marks at the end of the sentence, or sometimes in the middle as in terms of the period, excuse me, ignore what I just said. So period, question mark, exclamation point will go at the end of the sentences, and then commas and apostrophes will be in the middle of the sentence. Spelling, make sure every spelling word is correct. A lot of times when writers are first writing, they want to try to figure out how to spell every single word at the very beginning. That's going to slow you down. That's going to keep the ideas from being formed. Do not worry about the spelling at the beginning. Just worry about stretching out the word enough to hear the sound so that when you go back to the word, you will remember what it says and someone like the teacher will be able to read it. Spelling is fixed after all the parts have been completed. You circle the word as you're going if you know it's misspelled so that it can remind you, let me go back and check this word at the very end. So that is your CUPS editing strategy. When you're finished with those two checklists, and you can check all of them off, then you know that your writing is complete. We're looking forward to hearing your imaginative narrative. Be as creative as possible, and let's get writing.